Welcome, Hornets. This is the last portion of the implicit differentiation that we have before we start using it for a purpose. So one of the last things that we have to do is solve for our dy dx. Now, this is not that difficult if you've got all the other parts done. Let's take a look at an example. If I have x cubed plus y cubed, and I'm trying to solve this, and I say that it equals 4, we now have an equation. So we're going to do this implicitly, and we're going to be taking the derivative of both sides, d dx. This is the explicit, 3x squared, and then we have our implicit, 3y squared dy dx, and it equals 0, the derivative of a constant. Now our goal is to isolate the dy dx to get it all by itself and thereby solve for it. So we're going to have to start by subtracting our 3x squared from both sides. We're then going to take the 3y squared dy dx, and we're going to divide by the 3y squared on both sides. Now this allows us to clean it up and get dy dx equal to negative x squared over y squared. Now we could do this with anything. So we could do another one and we could say, all right, let's make this slightly different. Let's go d dx, and I'm going to go 4x squared plus 2y to the fourth equals x. Now notice in this problem, we've got two different sides, but instead of having a constant, which went to 0, we're now going to have a variable x, which will have go to 1. So we do our explicit differentiation, 8x. We do our implicit, 8y cubed dy dx, and it equals 1. We now subtract the 8x the way we did before. We end up with 8y cubed dy dx. It's going to equal 1 minus 8x, and we divide by the 8y cubed. 8y cubed. Notice our dy dx is now going to be equal to 1 minus 8x over 8y cubed. That's our goal. That's what we'll be using as we do this. Okay, notice, just go through it again. I'm taking my explicit, so 2, drop the power by 1. 2 times 4 made 8. 4 times 2 makes 8, but we drop the power, it leaves us with a 3. Then we use our chain rule for dy dx. Explicit derivative is 1. Subtract 8 from both sides, 1 minus 8x, leaving us with the 8y cubed dy dx. Divide by the 8y cubed on both sides, and we have our answer. Let's take a look at one more. This time, let's look at something that is by far just a little bit more complex than what we had before. So let's start off and say, let's have x cubed y squared plus y cubed equals x. Notice now we have a product rule. So we're going to have to work with the product rule here. That means that we have to take our u and our v. We want u prime v plus uv prime. I recommend you use your formula. You think about what each piece is. 3x squared y squared plus. Now we're taking the derivative of the y squared. So 2, put the x cubed y dy dx plus 3y squared dy dx. Notice the chain rule in both of those, and it equals 1. Well, here's the dy dx. It's in two places, so we know we'll have to factor. But before we can factor, we have to get rid of this piece on the left. So we're going to subtract 3x squared y squared from both sides so that we can isolate the pieces that have what we need, the dy dx. Just moving things over just a little bit so I have some room. and it equals 1 minus 3x squared y squared. All right, so now we can factor out that dy dx. dy dx comes out in front, leaving me with the 2x cubed y plus 3y squared, and we still have 1 minus the 3x squared y squared on the right. The last step is to divide by that factor, 2x cubed y plus 3y squared on both sides. Now, we can do this mentally. You don't have to go through all of this work. It is good if you often find yourself making silly mistakes. You should make sure that you can see your work clearly and legibly. If you are messy, that can be a problem. So you'll notice here I am with my answer. dy dx is now the fraction 1 minus 3x squared y squared over 2x cubed y plus 3y squared. That's our goal. That's what we want. All right, let's do one more together. I know this is a long video, but I need you to see the multiple choices that we have so that you can put it together on your own. All right, we're going to have an x squared minus x squared y squared plus y cubed equals, let's go ahead and have a 2y. All right, now we have three terms with y, so we know we're going to have to factor out dy dx. We have that y on the right side. We're going to ultimately have to move it over. You might want to do it now. So for example, if I just take this opportunity to move pieces around so that I don't have to do it later, it might save me the trouble. Okay, notice, very simple. You can even multiply everything through by the negative. If you do, that kind of cleans things up. Notice all I'm doing is multiplying everything by a negative on both sides. So it changes the sign, but more importantly, I no longer have a negative to do my distribution. Okay, that's important. Now, if you can't multiply both sides by the negative, you got to keep it in there. Use parentheses and think about it as a constant. All right, and then distribute the negative at the end. All right, so we have our 2x, y squared, doing my product rule. Notice this is my u and my v. U prime v plus uv prime, that's x squared y, dy dx. We're then subtracting 3y squared dy dx. Once again, chain rule, plus 2 dy dx. And it equals 2x. You notice this made it very clean, very easy. We're going to move this piece to the other side. So we're subtracting 2xy squared minus 2xy squared. Moving over everything to the left a little bit, I have 2xy squared, 2x squared y, let's try that again, x squared y dy dx. We then have this minus 3y squared dy dx plus 2 dy dx. And it equals 2x minus 2xy squared. Factoring out the dy dx. That's what we're solving for. Everything else is going to be divided as a factor onto the other side into the denominator. Notice there is nothing we can factor, so we just divide it on both sides. We're going to get our 2x squared y minus 3y squared plus 2, and then 2x squared y minus 3y squared plus 2. Those two cancel, and I now have my answer. dy dx is equal to 2x minus 2xy squared. On the bottom, we have 2x squared y minus 3y squared plus 2. And that's our goal right there. All right, Hornets. Thank you very much for your time and your patience watching this entire video. If you need to, you should watch it again. It is very important that you can do this. Thank you very much. Take care. Be well. Be safe.